We're at welcome YouTube! All right, guys. We have to redo it so many times. We're at Abandoned Cider, Germantown, New York, the production room.
Now we get to drink cider.
Yes, sir.
Oh, let me just read you our guarantee. Whoops. My wife calls me Spilly McGee. So we're called Abandoned Cider because we started off in 2015. I was living in the boonies, way out in the Catskill Mountains, like on the top of a mountain. My wife and I had just bought this like little farmhouse, and there were all these apple trees around. And the guy we bought the house from, he was almost 100 years old when we bought it from him. And he was like, yeah, I planted this tree and I planted that tree when I was like 6, 7 years old. So these are ancient trees. And he remembered all the different varieties of apples, and I'd never heard of them when he told me Ahsoka Spitzenberg and Kingston Black and Golden Russet and all these totally weird varieties. And so I got intrigued, I started Googling. The guy meanwhile died pretty quickly after he told me about these apple varieties, but I was bit by the bug. And so I went down the rabbit hole, Googled all these varieties, noticed that a lot of them were used for cider, especially Kingston Black and the Ahsoka Spitzenberg. And I was like, well, that's like a project I could do. And I started doing that. And that's how I got started with this kind of thing. And then I noticed that a lot of my neighbors also had all these like little wild apple trees along the edges of their fields and bigger apple trees in their backyards, really old varieties. And so I was like, wow, look at all these abandoned trees. Like this is so cool. Can I go, I started thinking like maybe I should like make 50 gallons of cider for my own personal use and just get all my neighbors to pitch in. And so that's how I started. We noticed pretty quickly that bottles were not going to sell that well. They're a higher end, in customers' minds, they're higher end, and we wanted this to be really like available and approachable, because that's what this cider is. So we started putting it in cans. So this is our classic cider. There's 110 different varieties of apples. Naturally, because each year is a little bit different, like we're using a lot of wild apples, so each year is going to taste a little bit different. So these are fermented to full, all of them are fermented to full dryness, 0 sugar. And because cider is so new, like you guys were saying, like you're not that familiar with cider when you first start, we try and educate, we do a lot of education. On the can itself, here's the apple origins, the apple varieties, et cetera, et cetera. So we really wanted to use the label to educate people. And then here's, this is a little bit more about the blend. The foundation of all our ciders is wild apples, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's a cool label.
That's really creative.
Really cool.
Yeah.
It's like simple, but it's like, it gives you more information.
It's important.
Yeah.
It's educating.
That's the first. We haven't seen that.
We were reading like your story and stuff, and it's you and Eric that kind of run this together. What has been the most thrilling part of this whole experience for you, the cider making journey and all that? And what's rewarding, I would say? What's
the most rewarding has been finally getting to a point where we don't have to like push it, where people are drinking it and enjoying it so much that we can't keep up with demand. And that's very recent. That's only been in the last like 6 months that we've like really felt like, oh, like people want this so much that we can't even make it fast enough. That's been really nice. So this is our 2019 Harvest Foragers Reserve. This is a really nice blend of only wild apples, wild fermented and aged for 6 months. So this is a much more complex experience than this. It's got a little bit more tannins, some more acidity. There's some perceived sweetness in it, but it's actually just fruitiness.
Oh wow.
Gosh, it's good.
And then this is special. So this is 110 varieties, right? And then out of those 110 varieties, we isolate a handful that we think are gonna be really good. We'll like, taste through all the apples. And then there's some that have qualities that we deem good enough for a single varietal. And that's where these come in. So this is C3. That just means that's just one variety of apple. It's a wild apple that we found in the Catskills. It was good enough to bottle and make a single varietal. So we made about 10 of these, and each batch is a nano batch. C3, I think we made 3 cases of, so 36 bottles. And these, we sell this only at the farmer's market and the tasting room because we have so few of them. But they're really delicious, and they're expressive of the terroir and just like the environment in which the tree grew. And then this is made with a wild tree that was not bred for anything. Humans probably never touched this tree until Eric and I found it. And a deer probably pooped out the seed 100 years ago.
I almost do feel like I'm biting into an apple.
Yeah.
It's much more tart. There's a lot more acidity.
Yeah.
It does taste a little bit like the wild apple.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely expressive of the wild apple. This is a different thing that we did. This is our Gold Rush. So this is not made with wild apples. This is the one cider that we've ever made that hasn't used wild apples. Gold Rush is a really interesting apple developed by Cornell University. It just makes a really good single varietal cider. The funny thing is that it's not sweet, there's 0 sugar, but because it's so fruity, your brain thinks it's sweet.
Yeah.
So there's some perceived sweetness, yeah.
I was gonna say
I got
bittersweet. I was gonna say bittersweet.
Bittersweet is good, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good, it is a bittersweet apple.
Yeah.
That's weird how that like kind of throws you off.
Yeah, we do have more, but I don't want to get you drunk, but I do want to. You'll be the first to try Vacation. You'll be the very first. So this is a brand new variety that we've come out with. I'm not going to show you the label because this is not what it looks like.
Yeah.
We're launching Vacation in 3 weeks. We call it Vacation because it tastes like the vacation we all wish we were on. And
I like that. I had a feeling it was going that way.
so I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to ask you to guess. There's apples and then there's 2 other fruits.
Oh, I smelled this before.
Right? I think I know what it is.
It's like on top of my head.
I think I know. Or I'm close anyway.
Oh, wow.
I think I know.
What do you think?
I think black currant and raspberry.
I'm gonna say peach.
Was it bloody orange?
None of you got it right.
Well, there you go. An apple.
Guava. Strawberry.
Guava?
There's guava.
Oh, I just want to say
Wait, what's the second one? Again.
fruit.
Passion fruit?
Passion fruit.
I could definitely drink this on vacation.
Okay, so this is barrel-aged Asian Chardonnay oak barrels and maple bourbon oak barrels, which we just put away.
It smells like caramel a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's got quite a caramel butterscotch note. Oh yeah, so I'll read this to you. The foundation of our ciders is and always will be apples from wild and abandoned orchards. In collaboration with our community, this cider is made from fruit foraged in the wild apple forests of the Catskill Mountains and from apples picked in the abandoned orchards throughout the region. We seek out apples that have roots in New York's rich cider heritage to craft the best ciders. That's where I come from, just tons of abandoned orchards. And some of them are recently abandoned. Like there's one right up the road here. The nephew of the owner reached out to us. He was like, "Hey man, my uncle has this 60-acre orchard. They stopped. They didn't go out of business, but they pivoted to other crops. And there's 60 acres of unsprayed but beautiful apple trees. Most of them are Macintoshes. They have some Galas and some Cortlands, all of which are great. You can use them for cider. And so we just go pick those, and then we give them cider in return. This is made with Cascade hops. So we dry hop it, and what that means is we don't boil the hops. We take the whole flower. If you were here on Friday, you would have smelled it because we were dry hopping. In fact, there's a hop right there.
Hey!
Yeah, so we were filling tea bags full of hops that we buy locally from a guy up the road. Not a guy, he's not a shady dude. He's a farmer.
The guy at the road.
Yeah, he's the guy at the road. Our guy in the corner up there. A farmer up the road, he grows beautiful Cascade hops. And what we do is we put them in giant tea bags and then we stuff them into these, not these containers specifically, but some containers with cider, and we steep it for I'm not going to tell you for how long. I'm going to tell you what else we do to it, but it's delicious.
Nice.
And yeah, so this is the closest thing that we come to beer. It's not beer.
I want to say it's almost got like a floral aftertaste.
That's great.
You guys pick up on this?
Yeah, I kind of sense the beer-esque.
So the flavor is floral.
It's kind of like a light beer.
Yeah.
It
Got a
is.
citrus melon nose, a juicy floral flavor, and a fruity finish. So some of these are well over 5 years old, and these are the ones that I started with. So I would label them with pieces of tape right across there, and I'd write, apple variety, yeast variety, and then the date. And some of them are awful. Most of the ciders that I made to start with were terrible. I would use like sake yeast, and sake. I would use Oxford yeast. I just tried different things. Yeah. And most of them were horrible, and then some were pretty good. And then I met my partner Eric, and he's the master. He's the artist here. So he's the one who does this. He's the one who puts the blends together, who isolates the apples, makes sure that they're, he takes care of all of our babies. So we're coming up on our 3-year anniversary.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so and Eric is great. He's my age. He has 2 boys, just like I do. And he's a hustler.
That's awesome.
And he's really smart, and he's got very different strengths from me. And we work really well together.
2, 1, cheers.
Cheers! Cheers! Thanks for coming, guys.
Yes. Like, comment, subscribe.